Hello students, welcome to Answer Writing program. Today we'll be discussing 3 questions taken from GS1 Modern History section. So the topics for today's discussion are civil and tribal movements before 1857 revolt, revolt of 1857 and the socio-religious reforms. Let us have an overview of our questions. So the first question is related to the revolt of 1857 and then what kind of changes we can see in the administrative policies of British after 1857 revolt. So we have to do the comparative analysis of pre and post policies of the British. The second question is related to the Arya Samaj movement and the contribution of Dayanand Saraswati in the India. The third question is related to the socio-religious reform movement, and here specifically we have to discuss about the role of Raja Ram Mohan Rai and Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar. So let's start with the first question. The first question is saying the revolt of 1857 made the British change the Indian administration completely. Give comparative analysis of pre-post 1857 revolt administration in British India. Let us try to understand the demand of the question. The revolt of the 1857 was a significant event into the history of India, which was contributed by a lot of factors such as the economic policy, the administrative policy, the socio-religious factors, along with the Sipahi discontent and the annexation policy of the British with respect to the different princely states also caused dissatisfaction among the princely states. All of these reasons converted into the consolidated efforts of the Indians, and that is why the revolt of 1857 happened. A lot of significant figures such as Rani Lakshmi Bai, Tatya Tope, Nana Sahib were associated it, and that is why the 1857 revolt is also known as the first war of independence. So we know it was a significant impact. It has a significant impact into the history of India, and we can see after 1857 there was a striking change into the administrative policies of the British. They had a completely different approach with respect to the governance of the India. So we have to discuss here in the question, we have to do the analysis of pre-1857 revolt policies with the post-1857 revolt administrative policy of India. So comparative analysis with respect to these two policies, these two aspects we have to do. That is the demand of the question. So let's start with the introduction. Here in introduction, we can write down about the 1857 revolt in brief. So as we have discussed, it was a significant event into the history of India, and it was known as the first war of independence because it was the significant attempt by the Indians to end British imperialism. It started on 10th May 1857, first in the form of Sipahi mutiny and later on as a coordinated effort by Indian rulers under the rulership of Bahadur Shah Zafar. Okay, so this is the holistic introduction we have given, writing down the 1857 revolt in brief. Now come to the body. Here in body, we are going to deal with the demand of the question, which is the analysis of pre and post 1857 revolt administration. Okay, so here we have written the pre-revolt situation and the post-revolt 1857 changes, what changes we can find out into the administrative policies, and there are different parameters. For example, Government of India Act 1858, which is also known Act of Good Governance. As such, there was nothing good about this act, but it was termed as Act of Good Governance. Okay, so what was the pre-revolt situation? We can see the country was governed by the East India Company and the post of Governor General was prevalent in India. But after 1857, when this 1850 Act was launched in India, passed, then there was a striking difference we can see. First of all, there was a viceroy and it was directly appointed by the government of the British. And the second important factor is here the company rule was there. Okay, now the company rule got finished and now Indian territories were coming directly the crown rule. So British crown was responsible for the governance related activities, which is a very important factor which happened after 1857 revolt. Also, there was a post introduced. So here the viceroy post was introduced, the governor general post was not there, and we can also see there was an appointment of secretary of state for India. So this was the new change which was brought after 1857 in the form of 1858 Act. The other important point is new policy towards the princely states. As we know, earlier princely states were dissatisfied by the policy of the annexation of the British. That is why now British after 1857 decide not to breach into the territory of the princely state. They didn't follow the policy of the annexation. Instead, what they did try to do the economic drain in a systematic way. So we can say the territorial annexation got stopped, but the systematic economic loot got started after 1857. So here we can see opportunity of annex, while here the rulers of states were given somewhat autonomy. The third important point is military policy. So we know in the 1857 revolt, the role of the sepoy was significant. Many areas of the country saw the significant participation of the sepoy. British understood this thing very clearly. That is why after 1858, what they did, the army was reorganized, and there was a martial and non-martial race concept was also introduced. So those races, those areas, those tribes which were in favor of the British during the 1857 revolt, they were rewarded. For example, the Sikhs, the Gorkhas, they were revolted and given as the status of the martial race, while the other who were not in favor of the British or who revolted against the British were given the status of the non-martial race. And also the important post, the higher hierarchical posts were kept for the British only. The other important point is there was a policy of division and counterpoise. So there was a continuous division of the people based on the caste, also based on the religion also, which we can find after the 1857 revolt. The other important point is administrative changes. So we can see the civil services. If we see the civil services, they were not, British were never interested in giving the higher post to the Indians. Even they were not allowing Indians into the civil services. There was always a noise against that. But in 1854, we can see some positive changes introduced. But after 1857, when the Civil Service Act of 1861 was launched, there was a detailed rules framed for the conduct of civil service examination. However, we can see higher service were preserved for the colonizer. So the higher posts were always kept for the British because they were not interested in giving the representation to the Indians. Policy of the divide rule, as we have discussed, it was into the society, into the level of society also, or into the level of army also, or into the level of bureaucracy also. Always they followed this policy of the divide and rule. So the divide and rule policy earlier were also there, but not so prevalent. But after 1857, we can see the army. In army, we can see martial and non-martial races concept. Also, we can see in the class or community, always there was differentiation based on the religion, caste, creed, or the tribe. So that was the policy of divide and rule. The conservative liberalism, what it does, it means earlier, if we see before the 1857, we can see there was not direct but indirectly British were trying to facilitate some of the reform into the Indian society, because they had a notion that they are having the racial supremacy. So it is the white man burden to do the good thing into the society, not directly but indirectly. But 1857, after 1857, all those reform, all those initiative related to the reform got stopped, because they understood if we are trying to do any kind of changes, it may taken against the rule of the British. That is why this stopped the any change into the movement, any change into the social reform kind of things after 1857. The next point is racial hatred. So see, this racial hatred was always there into the mind of British, but it was into the subtle level. It was not expressed by them. But later on, if we see after 1857, this hatred among the Indian races became much prevalent. So in India also it became prevalent by the British, and also into the British and the British government it became prominent. So we can see the newspaper and journals of the Britain, they published India as some subhuman creature. So this racial hatred became vast enough after the 1857 revolt. So these are the comparative analysis because before and after the 1857 revolt which we have discussed. Now come to the conclusion part. Here we can discuss impact of these changes. So whatever changes were brought after 1857 in the form of 1858 Act or later on also, we can see these impacts were causing a lot of issues. So for example, there was a frustration among the Indian middle class because this middle class was getting knowledge and it was getting aware about the outside activities of the world. So the aspiration of the middle class didn't get satisfied due to the policy of the British, because they wanted participation into the governance and other aspects. Also, it has shown up the real nature of the British rule. Why? Because as we discussed earlier, they were doing the annexation of the territories, but later on after 1857 they indulged into the economic drain of the country, which was much more prevalent, and it has shown the real nature of the British rule. And that is why we can see the significant role of the press also after the 1857, because a lot of intellectual people started the publication of newspaper and they published their book so that they can generate awareness among the masses. So we can see the administrative changes brought by the British after 1857 widened the gulf between the ruler and the ruled, beside causing eruption of political controversies and demonstration and acts of violence in coming period. So this violence which started with 1857, it got continued after 1857 also, because there was a constant conflict between the ruler and the ruled, and these policies created a problem into the Indian freedom struggle and contributed to the growth of communalism, as we have seen also. Later on, the divide and rule policy caused communalism also in India. So that was the conclusion which we have provided by giving the impact of these changes. Now let us go through the model answer. Here in the model answer introduction, we have given about the 1857 revolt in brief, and then we have done the comparative analysis of pre and post 1857 revolt policies under the different hat, such as Government of India Act of 1858, new policies toward princely state, military policy, administrative change, policy of divide and rule, and racial hatred. And then we have provided a conclusion where we have discussed about the impact of these policies. Now let us discuss our second question, which is saying the Arya Samaj movement was revivalist in form though not in content. Justify the statement and enlist the contribution of Dayanand Saraswati in maintaining the sanctity of the religion. Okay, so let's try to understand the demand. Here they are saying this Arya Samaj movement might be revivalist in form, but if we consider the content, the spirit of the movement, it was a reformist movement. Okay, and we have to justify the statement. We have to justify this Arya Samaj was not limited to the revivalist tendency. It was a reformist movement or progressive one, and we have to justify this statement. Along with this, we have to write down the contribution of Dayanand Saraswati in maintaining the sanctity of the religion. So there are two different part of the body which we have to deal here. One is related to the Arya Samaj movement, and then the second one is related to the contribution of the Dayanand Saraswati. Okay, so before starting the question, just try to understand what is the difference between the reformist movement and revivalist movement. So see, there is two kind of movement which started into the late 18th and early 19th century, because that era was a era which has been considered as the dark age, because there was a lot of superstitions were going on. So the different kind of reform movements and revivalist movement we can see, such as Brahmo Samaj came up, Arya Samaj came up, which tried to reform the society to bring out the changes, progressive mindset into the society, and it was influenced by the Western philosophy, the Renaissance happening into the Western world. All those effects, all those cumulative effects and results we can see into the Indian society in that early 19th century. So just here, because we have to understand what is the difference between the reform and revivalist movement to deal with this question. So what are the reformist movement? You need not to write it down, just for understanding sake. These are the movements, or these are the reform which fundamentally challenge the system which existed that time. So they want to change the system which is prevailing in society, and they want to bring out the changes within the existing institutions. So whatever rituals, whatever existing society is there, they want to bring out changes into the gradual way into the society. So they want to favor the scientific temperament, and they understand that it is the need to bring out the changes because the society is stagnant. The spread and the impact on these movements can be seen with the help of Western education and liberal ideas. For example, Brahmo Samaj. So if we see the condition of the women, Brahmo Samaj did a lot of work, and it said whatever the prevalent practices we are having in the form of satis, try to bring out the changes. So these are the reform movement. Now try to understand what are the revivalist movement. They say these custom and practices, whatever happening during the ancient time into the country, we have to go back to those practices, and they want to bring the society back to the glorious past because they believe into the glory of the past. They say the missionary propaganda would ruin Indian culture and ethos, and it is required to protect the religions. That is why they want to bring back the cultural heritage of the country, and they want to bring back the ancient culture or tradition which was prevalent into the society. So these are the revivalist movement. They want to revive the ancient past. But if we consider Dayanand Saraswati and the Arya Samaj, it was having the element of the revivalist nature. For example, it was talking about go back to Vedas. It was having that notion of the purity of the religion. But we have to understand, along with it, it was talking about the casteless society. It was talking about the women empowered in terms of the education of the women, in terms of the marriage age also, because it tried to increase the age of the marriage for both boys and girls. Also, they were not against the modern idea. They were in favor of the modern idea, liberal thinking. Along with it, they want to blend the past, glorious past of the country. So they were a fine blend of the ancient past plus modern idea. That is why they might be revivalist in the form but not in content. So that is something which we have to deal in the first part of the body. So let us try to deal with the answer. In introduction, what you can write? We can write down the origin of the Arya Samaj and its role into the society. So Arya Samaj was founded in 1875 as a monastic Hindu reform movement that promotes value and practices based on Vedas. So it was basically formed onto the basis and teaching of the Vedas. And Arya Samaj was founded by Swami Dayanand Saraswati, and he took the inspiration of the Vedas and said back to Vedas. Now let us discuss the body part. Here in the first part of the body, we are going to deal that Arya Samaj was a revivalist in form, though it not in content. So the first one would be result of a reaction of the Western influences. So to deal with the Western influences, it was formed. Dayanand Saraswati said the Western influences are negative for the indigenous culture. For example, if we take the education, the one who were not getting the Western education, they were having the inferiority complex. So it was very important to preserve the glorious past of the India, according to Dayanand Saraswati. So that is why we also consider Swami Vivekanand. He said the Christian missionary education makes an Indian mass of negation, lifeless and boneless. So it was very important to bring back the pride of the people. Also forward and liberal looking and liberal thinking, because it promoted the liberal and forward thinking. For example, the minimum marriageable age increased to the 25 years for boys and 16 years for the girl. Also, it promoted the intercaste marriages, and it promoted the equal status for the women. Also, if we see, the different kind of educational institutes were established by the Arya Samaj, such as DAV, which was having the modern education also along with the traditional knowledge. The vision of classless and casteless society was also a feature of the Arya Samaj. So they were not in favor to the caste-based society. United India was also a vision because they believe into the religious, social and nationally integrated India. And this modernity was there along with the patriotic attitude towards the nation, which was again a significant contribution of the Arya Samaj, which make it more than the revivalist movement. The Vedic supremacy, so for example, at that time the society was having many superstitious belief, and to bring back to the Veda slogan provided them an opportunity to go through the Vedic culture, which was not having the superstition into the place. Also, the idol worship was not promoted by them because they believed into the Vedas philosophy, which was against the idol worship. So these are the features which establish Arya Samaj more than the revivalist movement. Now come to the second part of the body. What were the contribution we can see by the Swami Dayanand Saraswati to maintain the sanctity of the religion? One true religion. So he always believed there is one true religion which is based onto the teaching of Vedas. Okay, for example, he have written Satya Prakash to promote the idea of the Vedas. Also, he said the Vedas are infallible and it is the bone of the India's religious values. Individual interpretation of the Vedas. So he provided that every human has a right to understand and interpret the holy text in the way the person want to understand. So he has been promoting the right of the knowledge of the Vedas to every strata of the society. He also attacked the orthodoxy. He was against the superstition. He was in favor to the casteless society, classless society. The next one is true to Chaturvarna system. So Dayanand Saraswati was against the caste system which was based on the birth. But he was in favor to the Varna system, which says a person can do any kind of work, and based on that work, that occupation the person is following, the Varna of that person is going to decide it. He also attacked the prevailing beliefs such as the illusion Maya, because according to him, it restricts the person to get the highest achievement into the person's life. So he said God, soul and matter are distinct and every person should do the work to get the salvation. So it is the responsibility of the person to get the salvation on the own by accumulating the knowledge and the conduct. So that was the body. Now come to the conclusion. Here in conclusion, we can write down some of the negative aspect and we can balance it with the importance of the Arya Samaj. For example, if we consider there was some of the controversial steps taken by the Arya Samaj, such as the Shuddhi movement and believing only one true religion and negating the other fact, or controversial practices of the past which he tried to bring into the field. So that is why there are some negative aspect also in Shuddhi movement when it tried to convert those people who earlier got converted. But despite having all these negative effect, there are some positive things which were brought. For example, it promoted the scientific thinking, it promoted the modern thinking along with the Vedic teaching, and it also tried to free the individual from the religious superstition and social evils. So these are the positive aspects. Try to balance your conclusion with these two aspects in your answer. Now come to the model answer. In the introduction, we have given in brief about the Arya Samaj and its foundation, and then we have written down why we can talk about Arya Samaj more than a revivalist movement, then the contribution of Viveka, Swami Dayanand Saraswati, and then in the conclusion we have written down, balanced the conclusion by providing some of the negative aspect along with the importance of the Arya Samaj. Now come to the third question, which is saying the contact of new Indian middle class with the West proved to be a catalyst for socio-religious reform. In this context, examine the social and religious movement launched by Raja Ram Mohan Rai and Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar. So see, as we have discussed in the last question also, the time of late 18th century and early 19th century was a time of reforms because a lot of people worked into this direction. Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, Raja Ram Mohan Rai, they tried to bring out the reform into the society. They tried to uplift the condition of the women and also those people who were behind the behind the strata. That is why if we consider this thing, new Indian middle class, so which were getting knowledge, which was getting education, which were getting influenced by the Western thought, played a significant role into these movements, because they were aware about the things going on into the West, also aware about the things which were happening into the Indian society at that time. That is why this middle class played a significant role. So we have to put out in perspective what kind of religious movement or religious reform launched by Raja Ram Mohan Rai and Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar in the sphere of socio-religious reforms. So that is the demand of the question. So we have to discuss the role and responsibilities and the activities carried out by Raja Ram Mohan Rai in the first part of the body, and into the second part of the body we are going to discuss about the Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar. So that is the demand of the question. Let's start our answer. In introduction, we can write down in brief about the context of the 18th and 19th century. As we have discussed, there was a lot of things going on into the society. So the late 18th and early 19th period of India referred as a dark ages because of a lot of superstition, ritual practices, and the status of the women and the Shudras. So this superstition and social degradation plagued the Indian society. However, with modern education and rising international awareness, this time was ripe for socio-religious reform movement, and people like Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, Raja Ram Mohan Rai played a significant role. Now come to the body. In the first part of the body, we'll be discussing role of the Raja Ram Mohan Rai. Okay, so he was against the orthodox religious practices. He was against the polytheism and idol worship. He promoted that there is only one God and it should be available to all. And he also believed into the simple practices such as universalism, humanism. According to him, the service of the human should be supreme. And also he translated ancient Hindu text in the easy language so that it should be available to the masses. The other important role is Atmiya Sabha. So he formed this Atmiya Sabha to promote the values of the Vedanta, so that the people who are indulged into the caste-based practices, discrimination based on the caste and rigidities of the caste can get enlightened through the philosophy of Vedanta, which believes into the equality of all. Impact of Western rationalism also, he always promoted the reasoning among the masses, because this reasoning can provide you a tool to see what kind of practice we should follow on and what are the derogatory practices. Also Brahmo Samaj, he established Brahmo Sabha, later on termed as Brahmo Samaj, in 1828 to institutionalize the ideas and mission worship and prayer, meditation and reading of the Upanishads. And he, as we have seen, he was opposed to the practices which were derogatory, and he also was against to the idol practices and meaningless rituals which were not supporting or progressive for the society. He was, the very important point which we have to keep in mind is he really was a champion of the cause of women education and to restrict or to eliminate the practice of the sati into the society. So he was the crusader against the inhuman practices, and he organized vigilance group and filed counter petitions, and because of his efforts, the government regulation of 1828 declared sati as a crime. So this is the most important role of the Raja Ram Mohan Rai for the women. He also tried to uplift the status of the women by promoting the education of the women, to uplift the status of the women into the society. He also attacked the polygamy, because according to him, polygamy degrade the status of the women into the society, and he also demanded inheritance and property right for the women. So these are the important steps taken by the Raja Ram Mohan Rai. Now come to the second part of the body, where we are going to deal with the Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar role for socio-religious reform movement. So he was having the ideas blended with Indian education and the Western thoughts. For example, we can see he was a principal of the Sanskrit college, so he always promoted the Sanskrit learning, but along with it he was also promoting the Western education, modern Western education, which can provide you a scientific temperament, which can promote the reasoning into the masses. He was also the champion for women education because he established around 35 different, he was associated with different 35 schools and colleges to promote the education for the women. So he also became the secretary of the Bethune school, and we also know that not only the girls education he promoted, but also he promoted the Sanskrit language for the other section of the society, because earlier it was restricted to the upper class society or Brahmins to the society. Opened gate for non-Brahmins, as we have discussed. In 1850 he became the principal of Sanskrit college, and then he opened the Sanskrit college for non-Brahmins. So against the caste hierarchy he took a very good initiative. He also he also worked for the widows remarriage. So because of his efforts, it legalized the widows remarriage in 1856, which was a very significant steps into the direction of the women empowerment. He was against the child marriage and polygamy, and he also took out a lot of issues and awareness among the people related to this. And he was innovator. As we have seen, he was teaching the Sanskrit, but along with it other languages, other educational systems also he introduced. So he tried to blend it, as we have discussed, the modern education along with the ancient teaching of India. He promoted the women's rights, he promoted the widows remarriage, he also promoted the education of the women, which is a significant contribution of Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar in the field of reforms. Now come to the conclusion. Here we are going to write down the impact of these things. For example, these two great people not only having the knowledge about the society, but also they were believer of the universalism. They were having a proper blend of the modern education along with the traditional one, and they had this internationalism, which means to have an idea about the universal values of human. And he adopted the rationalism to have the reasoning into the every aspect of the society and the religion. And because of his efforts, a lot of new ideas propagated into the India, which actually inspired a lot of generation in the upcoming time. So that was the conclusion. Now we will go through the model answer. In the introduction, we have provided the theme of 18th and 19th century, late 18th and early 19th century. Then we have given the role of Raja Ram Mohan Rai and Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar. And in conclusion, we have talked about the impact of these two great people into the Indian society. So that was the discussion for today. Thank you very much. Have a great day.